When humanity had integrated with the galactic community, they brought along with them a new boiling pot of culture for the various alien species to indulge in. Like many other newly inducted races, some cultural rituals had staying power, others were just momentary fads. Out of all the things that would become an opiate of the galactic masses, VTubers became one of them. No one quite fully understood the appeal of the VTuber craze. Then again, some of the species who indulged in this genre of entertainment didn't know either. Broken down to their absolute foundation, many individuals had abandoned their developed synapses and returned to their primal senses. They unhealthily financially supported this specific human entertainment business to an unprecedented degree, and sometimes to their own personal detriment with reckless expenditures. In fact, the amount of momentary enrichment related to the VTuber phenomenon became so prevalent, some galactic governments had to push back the cultural impact of VTubers. Due to thorough research, the introduction of VTubers actually dropped the galactic productivity by a noticeable number. The increase of xenoconsumption of human internet culture forced several groups to develop smear campaigns to prevent the contamination of human media into their own spheres of influence. In their own circle, the galactic web had constructed their own terminology to understand the unusual influence of VTubers. Eventually, they all just agreed to call everyone simps, under the assumption that it was a convoluted acronym that got lost in the dissemination of the original meaning. Because of this, several governing bodies had unironically adopted the term simp to describe the unusual circumstances surrounding their citizens indulging in loose spending on virtual streamers. Dare say, some may refer to it as raw idol worship. Without consulting humanity on the matter of VTubers, the mental health institutions of the galaxy considered designating the simp phenomenon as a mass hysteria event on an unprecedented scale. While the galactic governing bodies, mental health institutions, and galactic work productivity quota were burning down trying to perform damage control, the galactic web had other plans. Many purists, bored Xenos, wannabe anarchists, and everyone in between teamed up together to harass human VTubers. The integration of the human internet and galactic web had not fully established at the time. However, the art of harassment and unhinged racism was universal. There were a few victories of forcing a VTuber off their platform. Most had remained steadfast in the face of galactic tyranny. In a few cases, for the VTubers who left their human colonies to mingle with the galactic community, they got doxxed. For that, it was essentially a death sentence. As it turns out, members of the galactic web were much more willing to exit their homes and performed much more than merely touching artificial grass. Stalking, vandalism, assault. The internet Xenos were proving themselves to be a menace to societal relations. It became so prevalent, the focused hatred bled from the galactic web and picked up widespread news on human social media. While both social media communities were at each other's throats, one unusual exception remained among the outworlder virtual entertainers. A VTuber named Jean-Marie Petit, a French albino femboy known for his artwork, fashion and cooking. Occasionally plays games, but people tend to stick around for his deep knowledge of many topics such as war history and firearms. He was greatly regarded as a glorified online teacher, an unhinged degenerate and accredited for confusing the majority of the galactic web. When he got doxxed, his real name was revealed to be Camille Saint-Exupéry. His real face and address became available. The only information available on Camille were his credentials in French cuisine and authoring books on African conflicts, social relations and survival in wilderness and urban settings. Miraculously, his actual appearance matched his VTuber avatar, making him much easier to track down, though his specific name combination was so unique that it was incredibly straightforward to find him regardless. Yet, the man continued as if nothing happened. It became apparent to the wider community that Camille became enemy number one to the less than savoury portions of the galactic web. Where lesser people would have buckled under the weight of all the hatred, he persisted. The man even collected some of the death threats his associates received and read them to his audience. He laughed at the amateurish nature and lack of creativity in the threats, then went into detail on how he would have done it. No matter the context, Camille became known for absolutely insulting and taunting his detractors, mostly for being boring, generic, and uninspired. This enraged the underside of the galactic web even further. Unlike the other VTubers they had physically harassed, this one was special. A larger section of the galactic web had decided to visit his house. Prior to this event, it was made out to be a much more permanent solution. In the words of the event curators, it was a livestream event where the unnamed perpetrators intended to break into his house, then thoroughly dismantle him mentally and physically. Hundreds of thousands of the truly depraved and curious logged in to observe. When the team entered, the house had all the lights off. When one of the members went to turn on the lights, the switches were not working. In their confusion, they wandered in the dark with their flashlights on. The house itself was immaculately organized and cleaned. Not once did the intruders even think about why it was so easy to enter the front door. Not a single soul on the team paid no heed to the small details, like how the windows were reinforced, or how the door itself had most of its security features disabled prior. Even before all this, no one questioned why there was such a lack of information on the man's history, while other Doxxed VTubers had their entire histories exposed. The chat itself was split, with some screaming for the team to abandon the mission, while others posted emojis of their eggplant and spitting emoji. The cameras they utilized were high quality. They captured small details in the illuminated darkness, and the sound was crisp. This became apparent when Waltz of the Flowers began playing throughout the house. One of the members decided to suddenly split away from the group. He was close to exiting the door when a disgusting, squelching sound rang out. His body collapsed to the ground, flashlight rolling across the floor. By sheer chance, the camera and flashlight caught the albino. He wore an old French Foreign Legion uniform and donned an eye patch over his right eye. In his right hand he had the alien's decapitated skull. The other had an old machete that had seen so much use that it had been grinded down to a shape that reflected Camille's style of dispatching individuals. Not a moment after, the man swiftly disappeared into the darkness, but not fast enough. In a split second, the alien's camera caught sight of his uniform's chest, allowing the community to gain a vital detail. His name tape read Passy, not Sang-Expiori. Aside from that, the man had a body camera strapped to him. After a quick investigation, it turns out he had long figured out this event was going to happen. So, of course, he took it to the natural extreme and decided to do a real-life stream of hunting them down. Everyone in his sense stream-sniped the 12 men who invaded his home and donated money to give judgments on them. Like what the other parts of the Galactic Web had done, those 12 men were also doxed and were given on-the-spot sentences on stream based on how terrible they were. In the midst of witnessing and hearing fellow Xenos getting creatively butchered by a single man, a Galactic Web-wide investigation was launched out of morbid curiosity. While the 12 men were being culled like wild animals, the Galactic Web went down an endless rabbit hole. Even when the stream had gone silent, where the human who slaughtered the 12 men had ended his own stream with an honest smile, that night will be remembered and foretold. The killing of the 12 men became widespread news. All the context before the event became the forefront of controversy and brought about one of the fastest government responses the galaxy has ever seen. Countless individuals were charged and arrested in one of the largest busts ever in history. For Camille, he became a hot topic from how much the Xenos dug up from his past, and the sheer effort separate human governments had committed to ensure he didn't get sent to prison. When the facts were being reorganized, with the human being detained for a legal nightmare, the albino's history seemed too absurd to be true. Initially, they only found the identity associated with Thierry Passy, a man from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, former soldier of that country's army, famous for the mass butchering of several crime organizations and terrorist cells. He even personally executed criminals who tried to take advantage of the ensuing power vacuums. After some additional digging, it appears that his birth name was Louis Heureux, but even then, confirming it completely was suspect. The issue remained where a massive time gap between Louis and Thierry made people come up with countless wild theories on what could possibly transpire in all those years. Those were the only names that they could find, up until a certain alien ambassador blew open the entire mystery by revealing Camille's history. He intended to send him to a supermax prison and quell humanity's cultural influence with additional controversy. It was not one nor two names. Camille had 6 more identities under him. Each one a campaign of inordinate exsanguination of common sense and borderline propaganda. All 6 names that could have been the hallmarks of any one individual's life story were all attached to one man. It led to the extent that the 12 men who died were not even a drop of blood in comparison to the albino's monstrous record. In a public statement made by humanity's representative to the galaxy, in regards to Camille, he remarked, "We recognize that the galactic community seems split on handling Camille Sang-Expiori's ultimate fate. We respectfully request for him to return to Earth, especially since Senator Tishis has completely gone against our wishes and doxed the man personally. Thankfully, there wasn't even half of his identity, so we can still salvage the situation. Again, if you have read the files, sending him to a supermax prison will only expedite a rapidly erupting issue. Remember, he is still in detention willingly. For a vocal portion of the galactic public, Camille's actions were abhorrent and understandable, yet also demonstrated the flaws of several legal systems if 12 repeat offenders broke into his home for the intention of forced sexual torment. Still, many supported his freedom, but their voices didn't match the intentions of the ones in power, nor the vocal minority. Many of the powerful individuals did not believe in the reports on Camille, even when the human government sent them the files directly. Those who humoured the documents sent by the Earthlings thought they could do better, and they were going off of the fact he was only one individual. They ignored the red flags, even the live footage of him slaughtering 12 criminals. Their own hubris had condemned the singular human. Thus, he was made an example of. His final judgment was a 360 Earth-year sentence into the Orgriddee Supermax prison, one of the largest prisons in the galaxy. Among widespread protests and public outcry, the all got limited by a disgusting amount of social media control. Of course, many individuals believed that was the end of it all. Days, weeks, months, nothing more had come out of it. Even the human governments who were vehemently defending Camille had gone quiet. Members high up in the galactic governments believed they had won, even by a petty victory, up until one of them decided to perform a surprise inspection to Orgriddee. To the inspector's dismay, Camille was not there. In fact, he hadn't even been inducted into the prison. In a fit of rage, the lizard alien stormed the warden's office. "Warden Bizel, explain yourself!" The man in charge casually sat at his desk. Behind him was a covered painting. It seems you just found out." The heavily built crustacean-like alien passively reacted. The inspector slammed his hands against his desk. "Warden, explain why the fuck Camille isn't locked up in your prison." His teeth grinded heavily against each other in fury. "Because I exonerated him personally," the warden answered, causing the other man to get closer to his face. "Warden, you can't just do that. That man had a 360-year sentence. You have no authority to do that." The warden did not flinch. "Sir, allow me to state that my purpose in this prison is to secure, contain, and protect all assets within the facility. All staff members and inmates are my responsibility. By allowing that man into my prison is to break my oath and define my duties." The other man slammed his fist against the desk. "But you have no authority," the inspector raised his voice. "You are breaking the law by allowing that man to go free. Anyone else he puts into the ground is your responsibility." The warden shook his head. "Authority this, authority that. You don't understand this prison's history, then." The crustacean alien slowly stood up. This prison had a warden who was quite an interesting individual. "You wouldn't happen to know the name Alice Litminer, correct?" The inspector's eyes widened. "You mean the imbecile emperor? Are you mad? Just saying his name is basically grounds for heresy," the warden chuckled. "That only proves my point further. For you see, when that being served as a warden here, he enacted an oath on these lands. That individual was an extension of the Abyss. He was a dominion unto himself. Where he tread became territory of his homestead. He performed the sacrament to exonerate a lost human taken from Earth long ago." He turned his back to the inspector. "I may not have the authority, but he did, and still does. He never lifted the oath, and now he's the emperor to monsters beyond civilization. His will has more strength than our pesky mortal laws." The inspector remained deathly silent until retorting, That's fucking bullshit and you know it. The emperor's throne is beyond the reaches of civilization. He wouldn't care enough to actually listen all the way out here. That thing is literally beyond the concepts of what reminds us of our mortality. And besides, enacting an oath like that is just reckless, especially if it's to free one mere man." The warden laughed. "You think Halsey forgot about the concepts of compassion? Guess again. There's nothing mere about that man, far from it." The warden revealed the painting he had covered. It depicted a singular scene of a burning desert that had been glassed. Walking away from the hellscape was a large abomination of a creature, consisting of flesh and plant life that worked in harmony together. Chunks of his body were falling off at the seams and he bled profusely. Giving him a shoulder was a small, albino human with a shit-eating grin. Even though the painting demonstrated his age, the resemblance was uncanny. The inspector stared in awe before pointing a trembling finger at it. His mouth opened, yet he couldn't scream. He steadied his breathing before weakly saying, "Mr. Bizel, explain. How? How is this possible? Is that battle what I think it is?" The crustacean did his version of an amused clap. "You see what I mean? The day that man appeared before me, he wore the same type of grin as the one in this painting. It was raw confidence, void of fear. He already knew what to do before he even set foot into my facility. All of the circumstances that led to this moment might be a wild coincidence. Who knows? maybe Camille is just a direct descendant of this man. Or maybe the man reincarnated. Who knows? I don't. After all, that specific ethnic cleansing was hundreds of years ago. Maybe the universe itself is playing a sick, mathematically impossible joke. However, I am not risking it. Considering everything, I took it as a sign of the Abyss itself to bar him away from this facility. For the safety of everyone here. And you. The inspector trembled. What do you mean? The warden sighed. Are you serious? The fact you are standing here right now is proof that Camille decided to not pursue you, or any of the other people who gave him a 360-year sentence. Be glad he decided to continue his retirement. The lizard man dwelled on the warden's words, then exhaled sharply. His stare darted away. He could no longer look him in the eyes. I have nothing else to say. Have a wonderful day, Mr. Beazle. The inspector pulled out his cell phone, took a picture of the painting, turned, then began to calmly walk out. Mr. Teaches, I recommend that you leave that specific human alone. Even if he isn't the Emperor's closest companion, his capabilities are the real deal. I am saying that as a man who has seen his fair share of horrors. This is your last chance. The former ambassador nodded his head. That's why I took a photo of that painting. After he had left and contacted his associates, that single picture had caused a ruckus in the upper echelons, like a war had been raged. Everything had been researched, verified, double-checked, triple-cross-checked. The painting had been in the prison for hundreds of years as his own personal treasure. The fact Al-C was present for the planetary ethnic cleansing in the painting turned out to be true. As for his human companion, his existence was verified to be frighteningly factual, even down to who he actually was, and when he got abducted from Earth. Vasco Criado, Portuguese harbour master, merchant, warlord. Estimated abduction year in accordance with the Earth calendar, 1717. Ultimate fate, contested. In spite of that, he left his own mark in galactic history. However, it was associated with Al-C, not him. Vasco was concealed by the ones left alive to tell the tales. Those who decided to remember him only called him by a title, the Albino Devil. Despite that, the Emperor of Unspeakable Horrors also shared that title. In fact, the interchangeability between the Eldritch inhabitant and the human only elevated the mortal to greater heights if he could not be indistinguishable from them. Due to the state of affairs, in the worst-case scenario, no one dared to tempt fate, far surpassing the threat of death. Even the most hard-headed politician understood not to mess with powers beyond mortal comprehension. In all levels of the chain of command, Camille was officially and quietly cleared of his sentence. He became untouchable. Afterwards, nothing more came out of an individual named Camille Saint-Exupéry. In fact, the man vanished without a trace. Out of curiosity, Tshirt decided to search for anyone named Vasco Criado. He ended up getting a match. Though there were no pictures of the specific individual, his art style gave him away. The albino ended up becoming the main artist for a series of comics based off of historical accounts of humans who were abducted by aliens in the past. Seemingly, the universe led Tshirt to the albino as he was working on the third tale, Vasco Criado, the Heart of Evil. Because his current name was the same as the historical figure, people from all walks of life poked fun at the artist for making a self-insert, a biography, and everything else in between. The artist only made one remark to the ungodly amount of memes. You joke, but all of you are technically not wrong. He refused to elaborate and caused another part of the internet to burn down with their own theory crafting. Whether or not his comment was a joke, it mattered little. Tshirt took this single event as a sign of his god and left the man alone, and did not inform his co-workers of his discovery. The human was left alone to his own devices, and officially ended his tale in peace.